The first post-Mugabe Zimbabwean election will be remembered 4 years to come as the disputed election. It was close, and many opposition supporters are questioning whether it was free and fair. On the other side of the coin, business in Southern Africa will now rather be looking to the new political landscape and trying to assess what opportunities it holds. In a studio to discuss this further is AC Lumumba, ZANU PF strategist, and Anele Ndlovu, president of the Zim SA Forum. Gentlemen, thanks so much for your time. By way of introduction, your view on the election results, your thoughts on what has come out. AC, let's begin with you.
So, we went through a contest where all political parties were given the opportunity to present their case to the public, and they would use this case to try and get votes so that they get a mandate in office. ZANU PF won that contest. What happened yesterday was the officiating of a position that all Zimbabweans contributed towards. Emerson Mnangagwa has won the election. He won it free and fair. This is why you see the bodies that determine that have started responding. EAU has responded, SADC has responded, President Cyril Ramaphosa from here in South Africa has responded this morning. The opposition leader Julius Malema responded this morning. Zimbabweans made a decision. President Emerson Mnangagwa won the contest. You said earlier in your pretext, it was close. Absolutely, it was close. I think President Nelson Chamisa of the MDC put up an incredible, impressive show. Now it's time for the country to move forward and build businesses that can sustain the economy.
Anele, do you agree that the results that we are reading now this morning were indeed free and fair?
Based on the analysis of the observers from all over the world, one would agree that they were free and fair. We understand the position of the opposition party. As AC has alluded, I think they put in a good show. It was a close shave, but if you see the international observers giving it the European Union, for example, on top of all the SADC and all the other ones that were there, and the international community saying no, the people of Zimbabwe should accept the results and move on. It shows that everybody is confident that the results were free and fair.
But I mean, do we dismiss the thoughts and the statements made by some other observers, not international observers, but Zimbabweans themselves on the ground, the likes of Jonathan Moyo, the likes of Tende Biti, who say that this indeed was rigged? They even claim that these numbers themselves, they don't even tally. Do we dismiss that because ZEC has said this is the result, it is the way of the day, and the international observers have also said that let's continue with life, so we dismiss that?
Not necessarily. I think it's an opportunity for them to now do an introspection, put the argument on the table and follow the rules of engagement. If you're not happy, if you're not satisfied with the results, what do? You obviously go to the courts, you challenge it accordingly. So the floor has been given to them. I mean, even the international observer says those who are disgruntled or not happy with the results, it's their turn now to get into the space where they challenge the results. It's within their right, their constitutional right. So I would say if Nelson Chamisa and the rest of the MDC alliance feel like they are not happy with the results, surely by all means they can go to the courts and challenge those results.
I mean, I see some of the claims that were made by the likes of the former minister Jonathan Moyo there was that the ZEC actually participated in this narrative to ensure that President Mnangagwa now wins, that the ZEC in fact coerced some journalists before this announcement was actually made, that, you know, this would be the story. As a ZANU PF member, can you provide the people of Africa with the confidence that indeed this didn't happen and those elections weren't cooked?
Okay, so you couldn't have given two worse examples. You gave Jonathan Moyo, who is on the run. He's living in Kenya. He wasn't in the country during elections. He hasn't been in the country since last year in November. It's very rich for Jonathan Moyo to tell us what's happening in Zimbabwe when he's not in Zimbabwe. Second, you gave an example of Tendai Biti. Understand the background of the people you're speaking about. You're talking about Tendai Biti, who's a principal in the MDC alliance, so he's already invested in the opposition. But worse than that, this is a man whose track record is one where he never accepts the results of any election. You look at the elections within MDC that they had. When he lost the election, he decided to form his own party. Right after that, he comes back into the party. During the shambolic primary elections that MDC had, he's the one who was deciding who could stay and who couldn't go undemocratically. And then you move on a step back to 2008 when Zimbabwe had elections. It's Tendai Biti who was pushing the country to become violent. It's Tendai Biti who said to the country, if we lose, we must go and ask for sanctions. He led the trajectory voice of can we have sanctions now in Zimbabwe. MDC doesn't know how to accept a defeat, period. They've never accepted it internally in their own elections. They've never accepted it externally. So I think it's highly unfair for people with such an invested interest to give that comment. Now, let me put some validation on what ZEC did or ZEC didn't do. The reason you bring observers into the country, and you had over 50 missions of observers, ranging from European observers, American observers, South African observers, and institutional observers such as AU, SADC, Commonwealth, COMESA. When you hear all the observers saying, yes, we must improve elements of ZEC, we must improve how the public media captured some of the candidates, but not a single observer mission said there was a problem with ZANU-PF hindering other people from participating. How do you know an election is free and fair? Couple of pillars. Number one, did everybody who wanted to register to vote get the chance to register to vote? They did. Number two, did everybody who wanted to vote on the day of election get the chance to vote on the day of elections? They did. Number three, did the players who were participating against each other get the opportunity to demonstrate to the country what they wanted to sell as their program or agenda in a free and fair environment? There is not a single political party who asked for a police clearance who wasn't given a police clearance to hold a rally. So it's highly unfair to take the comments of two very bitter people and make them into some sort of global perspective comments. The two men are simply bitter and, by the way, have also nothing really to offer to the country of Zimbabwe anymore.
So this is nothing like in 2008 when the MDC actually did win, but those results were crooked because it wasn't in the power's favor. So this is nothing like that, because we do know many of us who observe Zimbabwe from the sidelines are of the view that, in fact, it is the army that is controlling the country. So you're saying with absolute surety that this is not 2008?
I guarantee you, by any standard or by any litmus test you want to run. In fact, when you hear the Commonwealth observers saying, John Mahama, the chairman of the delegation, he says, we need to take Zimbabwe as a case study. Because during the process, I mean, barring what then happened when the riots started, I won't even call them protests, barring that day, the whole process up to election day and the vote counting, there was not a single case of violence, at least inter-party violence. There was intra-party violence within the parties, not party to party. People were campaigning side by side. You were the president and the leader of the opposition on the final day having both their rallies in Harare, less than 1 kilometer away from each other, and not a single case of violence took place. 2008, observers were not allowed. This time, everybody was allowed. 2008, media was not allowed. This time, they were allowed. But most importantly, in 2008, it wasn't so easy for you to even register to vote and for you to even be able to vote on the day. This election, not a single case of a person who was denied the ability to vote on election day.
Anela, I mean, are we or were we kidding ourselves here in thinking that there could have been an alternate outcome, rather? Given that, I mean, if we look at how the power in that country changed, it was the army that said, Mr. Mugabe, please leave, under the coup, and placed their favored man in the seat. So are we kidding ourselves to think that the outcome that we're reading today, where Emerson actually has the majority vote, could have been any different?
It could have gone either way, basically. Look at it from this particular perspective. Everybody was free to vote the way they wanted. There were no challenges in terms of that part. Everybody was free to campaign freely whenever they wanted and wherever they wanted. So the campaign was very intense. The competition was quite high. Why should we then come to a point where we say, or probably try to insinuate that there was some kind of rigging or something like that? Because everything was done accordingly. Now, obviously, with the example that's just been given, that we had almost over 50 observers coming to the country. Surely it's a small country with about 14.5 million people. You can travel around the country within a very short space of time and be able to cover all these spaces. With that number of observers all over the country, how could if it been possible for people to rig? You ask yourself those questions, you sit back and you think about it and you're like, it's almost impossible. How could it be possible for all the observers, all of them, not all of them surely like ZANU-PF, or not all of them like MDC, surely that is the case. But if all of them come out and say, no, the elections were fine, the voting was fine, everything went very well, there were no hiccups, there were no problems, and then we wake up today and we say, no, elections were rigged and all that kind of stuff, I find it very disturbing. But look at it this way. It's difficult when a man has convinced himself and people have told him that, you know what, you are winning left, right, and center. When a person convinces themselves of that particular fact, it's difficult for them to accept defeat in any particular environment. So in this case, it's an issue of MDC looking. I think it's an issue of them looking at the way how they campaigned, where they made the mistakes. There's another 5 years to come.
Sure.
Surely they can compete better. There's still space there. We understand their frustration. What we are against is obviously the issue of now inciting issues of violence and these statements that they are putting in the media space.
Sure.
That should stop. We need peace. We need sort of like a fluid continuity from here on.
We continue our discussion about the historic elections in Zimbabwe with political analyst AC Lumumba and Anele Ndlovu, who is president of the Zim SA Forum. Gentlemen, let's talk about the economy now, because that is going to be what Mnangagwa has to resuscitate in order to deliver on the promise that he did make to the people of Zimbabwe. Where does he begin? AC?
So the president has already set out his agenda, and he calls it Vision 2030. And the president's agenda is to turn Zimbabwe into a middle-income economy by 2030. Where does the president begin? He has to begin by looking at the productive sectors of the country. And what are the productive sectors of Zimbabwe? You have agriculture, which is a very strong pillar. When you look at the agricultural capacity of Zimbabwe versus any other country within the Southern African region, we still remain the most arable landed country in the region. Should we be able to up our production on tobacco, for example, that's $1 billion crop we have in the country. Trouble with tobacco is it's a cash crop. So it's a crop that makes you cash, but you can't necessarily eat it. So it doesn't deal with our food sustainability issue. So that's why the president then has to reinforce or keep going with command agriculture, which helps farmers farm at a small scale, number one, for sustenance, number two, to be able to then leverage with each other to be able to export. So that's number one, productivity with agriculture. Number two, it's the mining. We have more diamonds now in Zimbabwe than you still have in South Africa. We have 25% of the world's diamonds deposit. Our ability to be able to leverage and market those diamonds, now that we've been cleared by the Kimberley process, means we can now generate more income with our diamonds. Gold production. We still have the second highest gold reserves within the Southern African region again. So if we're able to get gold out of the ground, that does two things for us. Number one, it strengthens our currency, so we are able to finally get a currency back. But number two, it allows us to attract foreign currency, because gold, unlike a lot of products that we're currently producing in the country, allows us to sell in foreign currency. So I think when the president, if I just took those two, which is agriculture, mining, we're producing, we're attracting foreign direct investment. And of course, Zimbabwe is open for business is his mantra. What that essentially means is the president is saying we have unclenched the fist of Zimbabwe. Anybody who wants to do business with us, you are now welcome to come and do business. No longer are we in the days of we do business with the West or the East or the South. We now do business with capital. We now are more interested in the argument for capital than we are in the argument of affiliation.
Capital goes to where it feels comfortable. And
that's right.
Anele, do you think that capital now feels comfortable to, you know, increase its presence there in Zimbabwe?
Definitely so. He says that a lot, by the way, that capital goes where it feels comfortable. And he understands it very well. That capital won't go to places where it's not welcome. In this case, just to further add, the ease of doing business in Zimbabwe was one of those things on top of the efforts, obviously, to make it very easy for people to come and do business in the country. There were challenges before, there were legislative issues, there were no proper entry points for the investors to come in. But today, if you walk into Zimbabwe, you want a particular office, or you want to register a company, when you want to see a particular minister, whoever that you want to meet, all those things have been made possible. You know, it's now easier more than it was before. Going forward, just to add on that, yes, capital has to come in. There's a lot of opportunity. He said it in December here at the embassy when he said, Fifi, if you want to be rich, the right place to come to is Zimbabwe. Look at it from this point. Zimbabwe is the pulse of Africa. It is the center and the gateway to the sub-Saharan Africa. If you're flying to Europe, you fly over Zimbabwe. I want to talk about infrastructure. That's where I'm going. You fly over Zimbabwe. If you planes coming in and out, going to Eastern Europe, wherever you're going to, you fly over our country. In each and every day, we carry probably planes over 200-300 a day. So if you look at that, instead of people flying all the way to South Africa, whichever part, we are the central distribution point. Agriculturally, we're strong. We're the breadbasket of Africa, but it has already been spoken about. Let me talk about infrastructure. Before you can do imports, remember we do it on land and on air. The key area that the president probably will be focusing on, besides really bringing up the agriculture, which he had already started with Command Agriculture, now is to focus on infrastructure, road infrastructure. That's where the opportunities are lying. Now, I just want to stretch this particular conversation to say the investment community must look at those particular opportunities, the development of infrastructure on land, right, the roads, for starters, the rail, secondly. Those are the critical aspects if we want to take chrome out of the country, for example, or if we want to take our agricultural produce. We need those things to be in place and intact. If we
but
want,
of course, you also need a functioning currency, and you did touch on this, AC. I mean, how soon? What do you think Mnangagwa's message will be to the investment community about you can put your money in my country, and you will be rest assured that you will be able to get it out again should you wish.
So what I have no doubt is we will reintroduce a local currency. We have to reintroduce a local currency. You cannot compete if you don't have a currency, because the currency allows the rules of production. So if I'm using the US dollar in Zimbabwe, if I'm using the rand in Zimbabwe, it means I have to buy the rand from you because it's your money. So I have to buy it from you, which means my cost of production immediately goes high. I can't make bread at the same price that you make bread or the Americans make bread. The only way you deal with that is you have to come back to the macroeconomic policy of the country, and you have to introduce your own currency. But what has been handicapping us from reintroducing our own currency is we didn't have the gold reserves to back it up. And as we build up our gold reserves, which we're doing now, by the way, as we build up our gold reserves, we now have enough gold reserves to introduce a currency. So I reckon that within the next 3 years, the currency will come back. But until then, to the investor who says, how do I get my money out? RBZ is allowing monies to go out. You just have to let them know when and how you want it, so that the country doesn't end up with a liquidity process problem. Remember,
AC, I'm going to jump in there,
please,
sorry, because we are running
sorry.
out of time. Just the last one. You spoke about the international observers not disputing the election being free and fair. Are you confident then that the sanctions on Zimbabwe will be lifted?
more than confident. There's no reason for them to continue with those. They just have to uplift those sanctions. So
sure, and of course this is all dependent on whether the opposition doesn't challenge this outcome, and we don't see a situation like we did in Kenya, where we actually do have an election rerun. Do you think that will happen?
Well, look, the opposition is going to challenge. They're going to try a lot of magical tricks in their minds to try it. But here's what I guarantee you. The
Quick
opposition
answer.
is not going to succeed in removing President Emerson Mnangagwa by protests.
Anela?
Yes, definitely they are free to do whatever they want. But for us, is to see the country moving forward from here.
Sure,
Yes.
gentlemen.
Yes.
Congratulations on your new dawn in Zimbabwe, although there are some corners that are questioning whether indeed it is a new dawn or whether it's much of the old system. But many thanks to AC Lumumba, who's ZANU-PF strategist, and Anele Ndlovu, president of the Zim SA Forum. Going into a quick break. Stay with us. Power Lunch continues.